Today I'm going to be reading a fabulous book that I found called How to Not Go to School. Parsley Mimblewood Saves the World. And this book has been written by Mike Forde to help children understand why we're not at school. And it's been illustrated by Rebecca Sampson, and the cover has been designed by Sarah Bessick. So I'm going to read it in two parts. So welcome to part one. It says the story was dedicated to the fabulous, funny, wacky, resilient children of a Wensleydale class in Ingleton Primary School. This was written by a teacher. So today I'm going to read chapter 1, 2 and 3. So, chapter 1, How to Not Go to School. Sunday the 29th of March 2020. I'm very good at not going to school. I've done it every single day of my life. First, I wake up, get dressed and feed my animals. Alfred the Great, our very fat cat, Parsley, my imaginary guinea pig, Mollywobble and Maximilian Ironbelly too, my two real guinea pigs, Einstein and Meatball, the dogs, Stickosaurus the stick insect, Diane, Pam and Anne, the nanny goats. Next, I feed me. I brush my teeth and then I don't go to school. For some of you, it might be a little more tricky. You've been going to school for so long that it's seeped into your bones. You have times tables tattooed on your brain and your belly rumbles whenever the lunch bell rings. You'll have to remember to not put on your school uniform and not pick up your packed lunch. You need to not go through the front door, not walk down the street, not cross the road with the lollipop lady, and absolutely, definitely not say good morning to your teacher. And that's all before school's even started. Then you have to spend all day concentrating on not listening to what your teacher is saying. I'm Parsley Mimblewood, by the way, and I've never been to school. Not once. I've never put my hand up to answer a question. I've never run a race on sports day and never eaten a school dinner. Instead, I learn things at home with my mum and my little brother, Bo. Things like how to milk a grumpy nanny goat and how to extract the healing properties of crystals. We live in a little ramshackle cottage at the end of a windy, narrow lane in the middle of the moors, just beyond Wensleydale. That's in Yorkshire. It's so far from anywhere that whenever a car drives past, we all come running out to say hello. It's so far that it would take hours to get to school and back, and anyway, my mum says they don't teach you the important stuff at school, like understanding the truth about crystals. She really likes crystals. Anyway, now nobody is going to school. So today, on Sunday the 29th of March 2020, I have decided to write a book for all of you. A book to explain exactly how to not go to school. Chapter 2, How to Care for Your Grown-Ups. Monday the 30th of March 2020. This morning I was woken up by a dripping sound. Our roof has a lot of holes in it because our cottage is really old and tumble down. And when it rains, we have to gather up all the buckets and bowls and bottles to put underneath the drips. I don't mind the drip, drip, dripping because it makes our house sound like a deep, dank cave. But when we're all stuck inside together, everyone starts to go a bit crazy. By the time I got up, Bo had already knocked over 3 bottles and spilt a bowl of Cheerios across the floor. I had to hop between the shrinking islands of dry, crunchy cereal to avoid my slippers getting covered in soggy Cheerio mush. Bo was being a very good boy because he was already cleaning up his mess by picking up and eating the dry Cheerios from the floor. I poured myself a bowl, but before I could get the spoon to my mouth, Mum had rushed in shouting things like, "Don't let your brother eat food off the floor! Where's my phone charger?" And, "Ah! Now I've got mush on my slippers!" I tried to explain that she should hop between the dry islands of cereal, but she wasn't having any of it. By then, her phone was plugged in and one eye was glazed over her screen whilst the other eye was glaring at me, even though it was Bo's mess. After a few moments, she tore herself away from her screen and sighed, "I think we've got a serious case of cabin fever." Cabin fever is what happens when we all feel cooped up from being trapped together in our little house for too long. And as soon as someone says cabin fever, we all start singing I Got Cabin Fever from the Muppets Treasure Island. We've had cabin fever so often that I've learned all the words and can do all the voices. Unfortunately, Bo hasn't learned all the words yet. He only knows the I got cabin fever line, and in fact, he thinks it's I got gabba giba. Mum and I cleared up the cereal, but Bo was still singing gabba giba again and again, and Mum had gone back to her phone, so I thought I'd go and feed the animals before the cabin fever got any worse. Whilst I was feeding the animals, I made an incredible discovery. Looking after animals is just like looking after grown-ups with cabin fever. Grown-ups are like dogs. Just like the dogs, grown-ups must be taken for regular walks. Otherwise, they start pacing up and down the house and muttering to themselves. Grown-ups are like cats. Our cat, Alfred the Great, is on a special draconian diet from the vet because he eats too much. And when Mum's stuck inside, I need to stop her from snacking too, or else she'll have eaten all the snacks and there won't be any left for me. Grown-ups are like guinea pigs. Guinea pigs don't do very much. Even imaginary guinea pigs are a little bit boring, but they do give very good cuddles. I found that a short cuddle is a surefire cure for grown-ups who have caught a bad case of cabin fever. Grown-ups are like stick insects. It's very easy looking after a stick insect, but sometimes I worry that Stickosaurus might be a little lonely without any other stick insects. There's at least 2 of everything else. Even I've got Bo, although he can be very annoying sometimes. But Mum doesn't have any other grown-ups in our house. Maybe that's why she spends all day blabbering on the phone about crystals. Grown-ups are like goats. We've got a copy of the RSPCA guidebook for keeping goats. Well, we've got all the pages apart from 45 to 52 because Diane the goat ate them. Anyway, the guidebook says that goats must not be tethered. Even though they are fantastic at escaping, you shouldn't tie the goats up because it can hurt their necks. My mum's phone is always needing charging up, so sometimes she sits for hours stuck to the wall, staring at pictures of crystals and looking at the news, just like a tethered goat. I decided that Mum needed some looking after, so I hid her phone charger at the bottom of Bo's toy box. This ticked off most of her needs because she was exercising by rushing around the house, she wasn't tethered to her phone, and she got a hug from Bo when he said sorry for putting her charger in his toy box. I felt a bit guilty about getting Bo into trouble, and also my plan only seemed to make the cabin fever worse because by lunchtime, everyone was grumpy with everyone else. That's why I've now decided to hold an official family meeting. Here's the agenda I made for the meeting. Official family meeting. Attendees: me, Bo, Mum, Alfred the Great, cat, Stickosaurus, stick insect. Discussion points. What are the symptoms of cabin fever? How to avoid catching cabin fever? What to do if you suspect you or a member of your household has cabin fever? What should we do if everyone has cabin fever? Any other business? Chapter 3. What about friends? Monday the 30th of March 2020. Sometimes I think imaginary friends are better than real friends. They never argue about what game to play, and they always know exactly how you're feeling. And they don't have any bad habits, except for Fartbot, the imaginary farting robot, or picking their noses, apart from Norbert Noseful. He is another one of my imaginary friends, and he keeps all his things in his nose. In his left nostril, he keeps his violin, his paintbrushes, and his pet mouse. In his right nostril, he keeps his golf clubs and his pet elephants. In total, I have 7 imaginary friends. 1. Evil Egbert. He is about the size of an egg, and he sits on my shoulder, telling me to do shockingly evil things. Once he told me to trap my little brother under a laundry basket with 3 heavy dictionaries on top to stop him escaping. Don't worry, I almost never do what Egbert tells me to do. 2. Norbert knows full. Everyone already knows about him. 3. Parsley, the imaginary guinea pig. I invented her before I had any real guinea pigs. And then it wouldn't have been fair to get rid of her just because I got real ones. Anyway, the real guinea pigs don't mind that she's imaginary. Also, I named her after myself because I was really young then and didn't have a very good imagination. 4. Pom Pom the Ninja. He's an imaginary ninja who looks after the imaginary unicorns at the end of my garden. Sometimes the other ninjas make fun of him for liking unicorns so much, but he doesn't mind because unicorns are awesome. They eat fairy dust and poop rainbows. 5. Detective Inspector Dracula. A vampire who is also a detective. Quite a lot of the time, it turns out that Detective Dracula was the murderer as well as the detective, which makes everything a bit awkward. 6. The Reading Dog. The Reading Dog is one of those big shaggy brown dogs who just loves books. He loves nothing better than to snuggle up and read my book over my shoulder. 7. Fart. A genius scientist created him with cutting-edge fart-extinguishing technology, but unfortunately the scientist got distracted and put the nozzle on backwards. So now Fartbot just farts a lot. Most of the time, this is kind of nasty, but sometimes it's useful to have someone to blame. Today, I was in the garden with Detective Dracula trying to solve the mystery of the sheep skull on the wall. How did it get there? Who killed the sheep? What happened to the rest of its body? I had 2 suspects. First, my brother Beau. He's always digging around in the dirt, unearthing rotting old things, and he won't let us throw them away because he calls them his treasures. One time, he found a black leathery bird's claw the size of his fist. He carried it around, tied to a piece of string for weeks, until Mum accidentally threw it in the bin. My other suspect is Detective Dracula himself, but I couldn't work out how an imaginary vampire could lift a real sheep's skull. I was stumped, and so was Detective Dracula. That's the problem with imaginary friends. When you run out of ideas, so do they. So, I decided to send for backup. I ran inside and grabbed the enchanted tablet. It looks and works just like a normal tablet, except it uses magic instead of electronics. That's how I talk to my best friend, Tui, pronounced Tui. There are lots of brilliant things about Tui, like that she can speak Maori, and she always has the best ideas for games, and her hair is a different colour each week, and she always knows how to solve a mystery. But there's one terrible, horrible, atrocious thing about Tui. She lives in New Zealand. That's on the other side of the world, so I can only talk to her by magic/electronic tablets. Tui cracked the case immediately. Detective Dracula must have used his evil vampire powers to possess Beau and make him put the skull on the wall. Then we played some games together, because even though we're best friends, sometimes it's a bit difficult just talking through an enchanted portal. I don't know what grown-ups blabber on about for hours and hours. After talking to Tui, I felt happy, but I also felt sad that she lives so far away. When I feel like this, imaginary friends aren't much help because they just feel the same way as me. So I wrote a postcard full of questions for my Gran. My Gran is tiny. Not tiny like evil Egbert, but she is smaller than me. Sometimes I think she's so small that she's not really a grown-up. She's more of a grown down. Normal grown-ups are so busy worrying about crystals and getting super glue out of Beau's hair, but my Gran always has time to understand. Here are some of the questions that I asked her. Did you ever have an imaginary friend? Who do you miss seeing most at the moment? How should I keep in touch with my friends? What do you think we should do when we get to meet up in real life again? So tomorrow I will start reading chapter 4 and go to the end of the book on how to not go to school. Parsley Mimblewood saves the world. Hope you've enjoyed it so far.